so the Home Brew Center is basically a supply house for people that like to make their own beer, wine, mead, whatever.
What we have here is a sweet vanilla cherry banana mead.
You can make a $50 bottle of wine at home for like $4.
$50 bottle of wine,
Yeah.
like equivalent?
Yeah.
Have you ever went down a rabbit hole? What's up, Cyrus? How are you doing today?
Doing real good. How are you doing?
I am doing good. So can you kind of tell me what you do with the Home Brew Center, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the Home Brew Center is just basically a supply house for people that like to make their own beer, wine, mead, whatever. And so we sell all the supplies and the equipment. And that's basically what Home Brew Center is. It originally was a company called Grow Fresh Organics, which has been in the Fort Smith area for, I think, 14 or 16 years.
Wait, Home Brew Center was home. You say it was called what before?
Grow Fresh Organics.
Oh, I had no idea.
So like there was a transition. There was a previous owner that owned Grow Fresh Organics.
Okay.
And I worked for him for a little over a year, just running Grow Fresh for him. And then we made a transition in February where it became Home Brew Center.
Oh, okay.
But it's roughly the same business as far as all the brewing supplies go.
Okay. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. When did you even get interested in anything like this?
So, as a teenager, I was involved in home distillation or moonshining.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where it all began.
Are you from here?
I'm from Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Far into Oklahoma or just right across?
Central Oklahoma.
Oh, okay. So you were in there a little. Yeah. Okay. So how'd you get over to Fort Smith?
So Fort Smith, we just decided to move here. We were going to move to Colorado first. That was our plan. And then we realized how much it cost to move to Colorado and thought, Arkansas is not a lot.
And then you saw everyone from Colorado coming back here. And you're like,
the land is pretty, it's beautiful also.
Yeah.
And
for
hilly
sure.
And, lots of woods. And so we found us a little spot out here and bought a piece of land, moved out here.
Okay. So you got started with, it's just called brewing, right? Is it still called brewing or is it, distilling is more of the term?
Distilling is separate from brewing.
Okay.
Yeah. So brewing is wine, beer, mead, kombucha. But once you distill it, it becomes something different.
Okay.
And so whiskey, brandy, gin, vodka, all that is distilled.
Okay. So, let's start here then. What typically do people distill at home? Like some different types of drinks that people distill at home, and tell me how easy or hard it is to do each of those. If that makes sense. Or do they only brew at home?
So technically, the distilling side is not legal.
Okay.
It's kind of like marijuana used to be.
Okay.
So federally, it's illegal, period, no matter what. And then some states allow it, home distilling. So it's when you take something that has been brewed, like a beer, and you distill it, now it's a whiskey. Or you take a wine and you distill it, now it's a brandy.
What?
Yeah.
I had no idea. So beer, you can take it and transform it basically into a different... That's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought you were starting with like the resources that like the same resources like wheat or barley that you would start with the beer. I thought that's what you're doing at home or when you're distilling in general.
Okay, so there's two processes. There's the fermentation process.
Okay.
And then there's the distillation process. So the fermentation process is taking sugars that are in whatever your mixture is, whether it's wine or beer or whatever, and yeast consumes those sugars and produces alcohol. But the max that it can produce is like a 20% ABV alcohol.
Okay.
Okay, that's all you can get from the fermentation process. Then the distillation process takes that fermented part and pulls out the alcohol. And so at the end product, you have something that might be as high as 192 proof.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So it makes it more alcoholic?
Yeah, because it's separating the alcohol from the water.
Oh.
So if you consider a beer that's, say, 5% ABV, that means 5% is alcohol and 95% is basically flavored water, whatever they made it with, whatever barley and grains and stuff that they made that beer with. It's water. 95% of it is water. So the distillation process separates that alcohol, pulls that alcohol out from the water.
Okay. Oh, and so then that's when you get your quote unquote like hard liquors.
Right.
That makes
Right. And that's the part that's not typically, it's not really legal.
Okay.
So,
wait, so let's say for instance, if you take a beer, I've seen them as high as maybe like 7%.
I've seen them at 12.
12. Okay.
Yeah.
So you take a beer, you have to have a lot of beers to kind of, it sounds like distill to pull out enough to have something that's considered a hard liquor, it sounds like.
Yeah. So
are you buying kegs at that point, or you're not buying bottles, you're buying kegs?
When I say if you take a beer and you distill it, now it's a whiskey. What I really mean by that is beer is made with grains.
Yes.
And whiskey is made with grains.
Okay.
Now, hardly anybody takes beer and turns it into whiskey. So if you had a keg of beer, which is like 15 and a half gallons for a regular size keg, if you distilled all of that keg, you're going to end up with possibly 3 gallons of liquor at like 110 proof. So roughly 20% you can pull out of something when you're distilling it.
Okay. So you're saying if that's not the way people would typically make and distill like a hard liquor, what is a typical way?
So typically you would make something like a corn liquor. So you would take a bunch of corn, you can add sugar to that and then ferment that so that the corn flavor comes out. The sugar is what the yeast consume to make the alcohol.
Okay.
Or you can also take all those grains, like corn is full of starch. You can convert that starch to sugar and then the yeast eat that sugar. You can use wheat is really popular, oats are popular, barley is popular, and corn, those are the main grains that are used to make whiskey.
So at that point, to me, that sounds more like not distilling, but fermenting. Because you would ferment wheat and grain, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's the first step of the process.
Okay.
And then once it's fermented, then you distill it.
Okay. And so is fermenting like legal in most states?
Fermenting's completely legal, even federally.
Okay.
So making your own wine, making your own beer, making your own mead, all of that is completely legal.
So distilling is only really illegal because of how much more stronger of alcohol content. I mean, you're making hard liquors at that point, right? And that's why?
I mean, I don't know what the real reason why doing it at home for your own consumption is still illegal. It's basically, in my opinion, it's a holdover from the Prohibition.
Okay.
1920s Prohibition, when alcohol, spirits were illegal in the country. And a lot of people started making their own because the federal government made it impossible for them to buy it at the store. It was a big deal for farmers because farmers would take whatever excess grains that they had that they couldn't take to market and sell. Grains are hard to store and keep them good because you have mold, you have weevils, you have all these problems with storing grain. So they would turn that grain into whiskey. Whiskey's easy to store, easy to sell.
Yes.
And so the surpluses that farmers had would get turned into whiskeys. And when the government made that illegal, that was a big deal.
Oh, because now they're just literally wasting resources.
Right.
They have to throw it away. What else are you going to do with it?
Right. And plus, a lot of people like to drink whiskey. So that's why it failed anyway.
Oh, okay.
That's why Prohibition failed, because nobody was going to stop. Kind of for the same reasons marijuana is becoming more and more legal, because people aren't going to stop.
Yes. Okay. So that's distilling. What about with wines? Because obviously wine is, I mean, lower alcohol content. You know, the highest I've seen a wine be is about 15, maybe 14.
Yeah, that's pretty typical for a wine.
And that's high end, and normal, you know, around 9 to 11.
Yep.
So you're not really pulling. It doesn't sound like you're distilling wine ever.
No.
Because so how does that made?
So you take your fruit. The fruit has sugar in it. You have to, no matter what it is you're fermenting to make alcohol, you have to have sugar. Whether you add the sugar or whether what you're using to ferment has natural sugars in it. And so in wine's case, grapes and things like that, they have natural sugars. And then so you take advantage of those fruits that have natural sugars. You introduce yeast into an environment that they like at a temperature they like, and then the yeast will consume the sugar and make alcohol.
Okay, so you would take the fruit and then you just ferment the fruit.
Yeah.
And typically, how long does that take?
It depends on how you do it, but so the analogy I use when it comes to how complicated is this hobby is an analogy where my dad was a huge baseball fan, and he knew every stat of every player, of every position. And when we would go and watch the game, that's how he watched the game. Like he was a statistician when it came to watching the games. I just liked watching the game. I didn't know any of the other stuff. You know, I just had a good time.
Yes.
And that was it. And so, you know, making your own wine, making your own beer, mead, it's the same way. Like I can show you how to make mead in like 45 minutes and we can make a batch of mead. Or the rabbit hole is so deep, you can spend the rest of your life learning how to make that mead exactly what you want it to be. Like the rabbit hole is huge, but you don't have to go down it if you don't want to. And so, you know, when you ask how long does it take to make wine, I can show you a recipe. It's very simple. It's very friendly, you know, beginner friendly, and it's done in like 3 weeks.
Have you ever went down a rabbit hole?
Yeah. Yeah, I get pretty deep down the rabbit hole, especially with the distilling side.
Okay.
Like pretty deep down in that hole.
How long were you there?
I'm still there. I'm still digging.
So you have some stuff literally brewing right now, just waiting?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How many batches do you have right now? They're just kind of waiting around.
I just have 3 batches fermenting right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long will those probably go for?
The fermentation process for that takes like 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not very long. Okay.
And then you have the distillation process, and then the time for the distilling portion of the hobby is aging. So, you know, you hear about people buying a $12 or a 12-year-old Scotch.
Yeah.
They've waited 12 years after it was finished before they even sold it.
Does that even make it better?
Yeah.
It does? Why does it
matter.
make it better?
So,
Because obviously we've all heard about this before. Like, you know, this bottle's this old and they only pull it out for this super special occasion.
Right.
And I'm not wealthy enough to have drinking such bottles. So what's the actual taste difference and why is it actually better?
So when it comes to like, say, a whiskey, it's aged in a barrel. And that interaction with the oak is either charred or toasted, sometimes both. The interaction that alcohol has with that oak changes the flavor profile of the whiskey. And the longer it sits, the more the flavors will subdue each other, complement each other, and over time they just kind of, as opposed to like, if you take something straight off the still and taste it, you can taste very specific parts of it. If you were to age it for a long period of time, it would seem like a completely different product that you couldn't distinguish. Well, for me, I should say, I can't even distinguish what it might have been.
Like if you would took it out earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a completely different product.
Huh. So I come from a coffee background, and to me, it sounds like that's much more of a difference of if you take an espresso shot with the same coffee and you take the strip coffee, you're like, well, if you drink espresso, I mean, there's no way you can tell what it may taste like with a pour over. Like it's just such different.
Yeah.
so many different variables, even in the brewing process and things. So I can relate to it in that. When did you feel like you developed your taste buds for this? That makes sense, because it sounds like you have to have a palate for this.
So I'm unfortunate in that I don't have a real sensitive palate. So I never have fully developed what some people have, just because I don't know why. Maybe it's just how my body is. Maybe in my 20s, I burned out my palate anyway. So who knows? But I'm not as sensitive. Like my wife, on the other hand, is very, very sensitive palate. She can tell you much more about something when she tastes it compared to when I taste it. You know, I mostly can tell you, man, I really like that. Or maybe I can pick out one or two things that I don't like, or maybe I can pick out one or two things that I really like, but it's pretty vague. My descriptions are pretty vague.
See, for me, that's where, when it comes to taste, especially like with drinks, that's where the rabbit hole goes for me, because I do have a very, I would say, good taste palate. And so if I taste something, and again, I'm relating it back to coffee. If I brew a cup of coffee with a certain coffee that's, let's say it's a higher profile coffee, and I taste something, I'm going to say, okay, how can I tweak the brew method next time to taste more of this? And I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to write down my recipe, write down the variables, everything. Right. And I'm just going to tweak. Oh, this is pretty good. I think I peaked out on this specific batch of coffee. Let's move to a different coffee now. Yeah. And that's a lot of fun for me. I enjoy that. Do you have anything like that when it comes to brewing?
Yeah, but probably just not as detailed.
Okay.
So where you might have a list of 5 different avenues you might consider going with, 5 different variables that you might try changing with this particular blend, I might have 1 or 2.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, I do the same thing, just not in depth.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's go back. As a teen, that's when you first got interested. You were dabbling, trying out some things at home. What happened from there?
So nothing for quite a while. And then, my wife and I moved out here. We lived off grid. And part of, I've always been in construction most of my life. And when we got out here, there wasn't a lot of work. We didn't know anyone. And so it wasn't really easy for me to get work. So we struggled quite a bit. And I built a small remodeling business and handyman business slowly. And then about 6 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that this is not something I can do forever. My body, I'm getting older. My body started complaining about how I've treated it all my life. Construction's not an easy way to earn a dollar. And so I decided I've got to find some other way to earn a dollar. And after a lot of research, I decided I was going to see if I could make some money online. And so the first website that I built was called Off Grid Maker. And I just wrote articles about how my wife and I lived off grid, the things that I built, like a solar water heater and all the different things we did to live off grid. And I had committed to writing at least one article every week. One week I had nothing to write about, but I was making a batch of mash to make some moonshine, which at that time was a portion of our income. And I thought, I'll just do an article about making this mash. And that article exploded. Like, it was the most popular article on the entire website. And so I thought, well, maybe there's something here. Maybe I should pivot. And so then I built another brand called Still in the Clear that was all about home distillation, getting people into the hobby of, making their own whiskey and stuff at home.
So what made you even have the idea to go online? Because, we're in Arkansas. Well, there's so many different things that kind of make that interesting that you thought to do that. One, we're in Arkansas where it's not very, like, there's not a lot of influencers here, right?
Right.
2, you're living off grid You're running away from the internet. You're running away from technology, but yet you have the thought, maybe I can make some money online. How?
Yeah.
Why did that even come up?
I researched for a long time all the different ways that I could earn $1 that didn't require me physically using my body.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of things I looked at. Doing it online was something that, first of all, the barrier to entry was very small. So we didn't have a lot of money. It's not like I had a lot of money to go out and invest in maybe real estate or something like that. This was something I could do for nearly nothing. I started with, I think I paid like $100 for a website, domain, and hosting. That's all it took to actually start. Everything else was just learning curves, learning how to figure out what things like keyword research are and different things to write articles, lots of learning curves on, because I built my own website, didn't even know how to do it, just started watching YouTube videos. And so basically that was one of the things was, first of all, yeah, it's Arkansas, but YouTube's not just in Arkansas. So it didn't matter that I lived in Arkansas.
That's so good. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm just out in the woods, but YouTube is everywhere. So if I can learn how to make some money on YouTube, doesn't matter that I live out in the woods. It was pretty difficult because like we didn't have internet. So for the first, I don't know if it was like for the first year or two, I was going to town. I would go hang out at the truck stop with my laptop because we didn't even have internet. So I couldn't upload anything and I mean, we had internet, but only on our phones. Like the cell service was our only internet. And then I would hang out at the library, like the local ladies at the library, like probably without the library and those ladies, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull it off.
That's crazy.
Like, yeah. And
That's so cool.
I would hang out at like the vapor station down in Van Buren because they had free Wi-Fi, and I would be there for 3 or 4 or 5 hours writing an article or something like that. It was pretty rough at the beginning. It was a lot of, and I was still working full time. Like I would get up at like 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. I'd work until 8:30, 9. I'd go work. I'd get home and, it'd be 6 o'clock or something. And my wife would feed me and I'd work on it until it was bedtime. Wow. Like, she jokes about not having a husband for like a year and a half. Because it was
brutal.
It was brutal. Yeah, it's not that bad anymore,
So when you, I guess kind of just making sure we're following the same thread. So you started off blogging, you built a website, you then began to take more of you were maybe already personal, but even more personal route with it. And you're like, well, what else am I doing? Hey, I'm making this. I'm just going to write about it. You write the article, it blows up. What does Still in the Clear go from there? So I had no intention in the beginning to sell a physical product. My idea was that I could earn money online through affiliate programs and ad spend, ad share revenue, things like that, and never really wanted to sell a physical product. But I did these recipes and people would be interested in these recipes. And I'd say, well, it's this, it's this ingredient, this ingredient, and this ingredient. And I started getting all these emails from people saying, I can't find these ingredients locally. Where do I get them? And it was easy for me to get them here. And so I would just like, hey, I'll send you some, And so it started out as I'd just send somebody 15 pounds of this or that. And then I finally realized, there might be a market for me to put together a kit. Everything is pre-measured, everything is ground, everything is ready to go, some instructions and everything. And so I did one of those kits and that exploded. And so then I developed more kits and I realized that the beginner, somebody who wanted to get into it, that market was underserved. And so I focused just on the beginner. So at this point you had transitioned from blogs only to now you're creating YouTube videos. Yeah. So at this point I had a blog, I had a YouTube channel, I had a podcast, I had a newsletter. What were your views on your YouTube videos doing around then? Or let's say, what did the big one do around about that blew up? So for the first 2 years, probably it wasn't much. And then that one video exploded
like somehow I had had it up for months. And I don't know if YouTube just found it or if they found the right audience for it or how that it happened, but it blew up overnight. And, it might have had 300 or 400 or 500 views on it, had been on YouTube for several months, maybe even a year. And then all of a sudden overnight from December to January had 100,000 views.
Oh, wow.
It just exploded. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when that video exploded, well, then the website exploded.
Okay.
Because I've always kind of interlinked everything. Like if I'm doing a video, it's like, hey, check out my website or check out my podcast or sign up for the newsletter, and if I'm in the newsletter, here's a link to a video. And so I just kind of use a synergy with all of those internet properties. I don't know what you call them.
Yeah, assets.
Assets.
Yeah, I call them, yeah.
So I just intermingle all of them. So if one of them does really well, the others do well also.
No, that's really cool. Okay. So the product that you had made for people at that time, the kit, those were to brew moonshine?
Those were to make moonshine. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then at what point in this journey did you then say, okay, Still in the Clear is doing great. There's a need for the Home Brew Center?
So that was an opportunity that came around that I didn't see coming. So the first problem I had when my kits started selling is I wasn't buying my grains at a wholesale price. So my profit margins were not very good in the beginning because I was paying retail prices for grains, building kits, selling the kits. So I came to the owner of Grow Fresh, and he was kind of wanting to get out of it a little bit. Like he had another job. And so I was like, hey, I'll work your store. I'll come down here. I'll open the shop up. I'll take care of your customers. You don't even have to pay me. Just let me order my grains on your wholesale account. So all of a sudden, the grains that I was building the kits with, I was getting at half the price. Because he was letting me to order through his wholesale account. And so I did that for like a year. I ran his store in exchange for just being able to buy grains at his prices.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
sounds like a great deal for him.
It was a great deal for both of us.
Yeah.
I mean, it was mutually beneficial.
That's awesome.
I was happy. He was only open like 2 days a week.
Oh, okay.
So I was happy to come down, open things up. And he also let me do my shipping out of the building and everything. So it was mutually beneficial.
Okay.
And
yes.
And then through that relationship, I was kind of like, why don't I just do this home brew, just take over the shop. And so, he still owns the building. I just became his tenant. And so Grow Fresh is not there anymore. And Home Brew Center is now there.
Oh, same building down the street here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, same location.
Okay, so Still in the Clear is doing great, and it has been since it started really. Why did you even see a need? What was the need you were trying to meet, or that you're trying to meet right now with the Home Brew Center? Why start something new?
So, I think there is a benefit to having like a physical location, like a brick and mortar store. And so what worked very well for Still in the Clear was targeting a brand new beginner audience. And I felt like that same need has not been met with people that might want to make their own beer or wine or mead. And with a physical location, I can do workshops, which I do. So like I said earlier, I can show you how to make some wine in like 45 minutes. That's a workshop. And I can show you how easy it is, right? I can do the same thing we do that with wine and mead right now. We will be doing it with beer also. But having that physical location is very helpful for that.
Do you post these workshops up anywhere?
Yeah. We have a website, homebrewcenter.com. So if you go to homebrewcenter.com/workshops, there's a schedule. Right now, at this point in time, we're doing them in conjunction with the market every third Saturday. So we have 2 workshops every third Saturday right now.
And they're free, right?
They're free. Yeah, just come on
which
down.
Which is so cool.
Watch it. And, then you can decide, do I want to try this or do I not want to try it?
And what do you learn to make in those workshops?
So we have a mead workshop and a wine workshop, and they are the most basic recipes that there are. Like it is the surface level, how I just want to show people this is how easy it can be if you want to do it.
Okay. And so right here we have, what do we have here? These are things you can make at the workshop, right?
So these are not from the workshop. They're a little bit more complex, but not by a lot. There's like 2 learning curves beyond the workshop to get to this.
Okay.
So it's not a lot. But this is a very beginner friendly, what's called a Viking blood recipe, which is mead. I just brought meads. I should have brought a wine too. I didn't think about it. And I don't even remember what this one is. Let me check it out. It's a vanilla something or other. So this is a sweet vanilla cherry banana.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to try these out on the episode today here for the very first time. Yeah, we're going to get started with this first one. And so you're saying what you teach at these workshops isn't very far off from what we have here. And for people who are maybe listening to only audio, what we have here is a sweet vanilla cherry banana mead. Yeah. And while I'm tasting this, can you explain the difference between a mead and wine?
So technically mead is a wine, but what makes the difference is mead is made with honey. And so wine is made with fruits, whether it's blackberry, blueberry, grapes, whatever. That's what, and it's water, fruits and water. Mead is honey and water.
So when I smell it, the very first thing I get is all the honey. Like that's the aromas coming through very strong.
Yeah. And so, this is a sweet mead, which means after the fermentation is done, we back sweeten it with more honey that does not get fermented. And that's why there's so much honey on the nose.
And how much, I want to use the same term that you use instead of just saying alcohol content. What did you say?
So ABV.
ABV.
Alcohol by volume.
Okay. What's the ABV of this?
This one is like 9.5%.
9%?
Yeah. So it's
it doesn't even taste like you really don't even taste.
Right.
It doesn't taste alcoholic on it. I mean, to me, this does not taste alcoholic. It tastes more like, I would describe it more of like, even less strong than a kombucha. Like, you know how kombucha has a very strong alcohol, kind of like almost like alcohol-y taste. This doesn't even have that. Yeah, it's very smooth. More of a juice type texture and feel.
Yeah, and that's also because of the back sweetening. Like you can make a mead dry just like you can make a wine dry, which with a dry wine you can there's a much more sense of, oh, this is alcoholic. Because it's dry. And then as you sweeten it, that sense, it goes away. Okay.
So for the next one, what do we have over here?
So this one is Viking blood. This is a really popular kind of traditional Viking mead recipe. And it's also in the category of what's called a melomel, which is a mead that has fruit added to it. And this is cherry. So it's cherry and honey and cherry and honey and water.
So for audio listeners, I also want to know why is it called Viking blood. But for audio listeners, this is a very it's almost like a rosy pink color to it, tint.
It's a pretty deep rose color, I would say.
Yeah, I mean it's like a orangish red.
Okay.
Yeah, that type of color. So why is it called Viking blood?
I don't know. Maybe the color.
This one definitely tastes more alcoholic.
Yeah. This is a semi-sweet instead of this is a sweet mead. This is a semi-sweet mead, which means it's less sweet. So you get more of that alcohol grab. And I think it also might be a higher ABV. Let me check. Yeah. It's also 13.9% ABV. Whoa, okay. So it's quite a bit stronger.
I prefer this one.
Yeah.
All day over this one.
Me too.
Yeah. I just don't I don't want too sweet,
Yeah.
But I get some people need it this sweet to enjoy it. But this one right here, it does have a little bit more like dryness. Less. It is less smooth, but I want that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But I think we're in the minority. I think most people want something that's sweet. Yeah.
Okay. So the kits that you sell, to my understanding, the workshops are really to help promote the sale of the kits that are a completely separate product that you talked about earlier that you were doing with Still in the Clear.
Correct.
So when did the kits come about for the Home Brew Center? And explain to me what actually is in the kits.
So, like I said, I felt like there's an underserved part of the market, which is someone who doesn't know anything about how to make some mead or wine, but they want to. They want to learn, right? And so you could come up to the shop and say, hey, I'd like to learn how to do this. And I can walk you around the shop and I can pull this off the shelf and pull this off the shelf and pull this off the shelf and say, you're going to need this and you're going to need this and this. But if my target audience is the beginner, then I need to be able to pull one box off the shelf and go, here's everything you need in this box. And so like the Mead Made Easy kit has everything
you can take
need.
that and put it over here if you want. Yeah. There we go.
And so this kit right here has everything you need in it to make a gallon of mead.
Okay.
Without the water. It even has the honey in it.
Oh, wow.
And a gallon will make roughly 6 of these 16-ounce bottles.
Wow. For $77.
Yeah. And then
crazy.
when you're done with that first batch, you've still got all the equipment. All you got to do is go buy more honey. Or if you want to make some Viking blood, go buy some more honey, some more cherries. And now you can try different recipes. But you have all the equipment to do a gallon at a time.
Okay. That's very interesting.
And that's why I put the kit together, because I want to make it as easy as I can make it for somebody that is just starting out. You know, because most of the time when somebody considers, I want to get into this new hobby, no matter whatever it is, the first thought is, this is a very complicated thing, because they see someone who's been doing whatever hobby it is for 20 years, and they see this person with all this equipment and all of this knowledge. And so your automatic feeling is, oh, this is very complicated. This is going to be hard for me to learn. This is going to take a long time. This is, you know, and so I want to demystify that and say, no, this actually is going to take 45 minutes and this is all you need to do it.
So when it comes to content, what have you kind of been thinking about for the Home Brew Center to kind of set it aside from Still in the Clear?
So mainly it's just the difference between brewing and distilling. That's pretty much it. As far as the ideas and the concepts behind the content, I'm going to do basically what I did with Still in the Clear because it worked.
Yeah.
I'm just going to duplicate that process. It's just a different topic.
Well, I mean, even like you said, that box makes 6 of these. If you were to go out and on the cheap end buy a wine bottle with a 13% ABV, I mean, you're looking at, you know, maybe $20. I want to say 15, but I don't even know.
15 and up.
15 and up. 15 times 6.
Well, now the wine kit is different. We also have a wine kit that'll make a gallon of wine, but a wine bottle is 750 milliliters, so it holds a little bit more. So it'll make 4 bottles of wine, the wine kit, whereas the mead in these bottles will make 6 bottles.
Okay.
It's still a gallon either way.
Yeah.
But, so...
There's some cost savings as what I'm saying. It sounds like, you could be saving. Because the other thing, too, is like you buy the kit, like you said, but once you have the kit, you can just go replenish your resources to make it. Which is going to be, so you're not always going to be spending $77. You're going to spend, it's like kind of like when you get into home brewing for coffee. You buy the espresso machine one time.
The upfront cost.
Yeah. And then after that, you're just replenishing your coffee every month.
Then it's just ingredients.
This is the same. And so like if you're someone like, I know like myself, I enjoy a glass of wine in afternoons. I don't have to spend $20 every 2 weeks or every week.
Yeah.
To do that.
You can make a $50 bottle of wine at home for like $4.
$50 bottle of wine, like equivalent?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Not
What do you mean by that? Explain that to me. So when
so the skills required to make a really good wine is the cost of ingredients is not that much. It's the knowledge of how to do it.
okay.
Right. And so this beginner kit is the first step. It's going to make a very basic dry wine. That's not a $50 wine. But as you come into the shop, you buy these ingredients, you say, hey, how do I get my acid levels to blend? And I say, oh, well, this is how you do it. And then now you know how to do that. And there's several of those kind of steps. And I'm sure it's the same with coffee. Like there's all kinds of little
Yes.
pieces of information that if you do this, it's going to be better.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's a whole journey of that. And it's the same with wine or mead. And you just go down that journey, you learn more and more. You get to the point where you can make a $50 bottle of wine for $4 at home.
And just to be, I know this maybe will sound kind of silly, but just to be clear, this is completely all legal to do at home.
Wine, mead, beer, completely legal.
No issues at all.
Yeah. And as far as the distilling goes, it's technically illegal. But if you are just making some whiskey at home for you, maybe to share with your buddies at the barbecue, nobody's coming for you. It is technically illegal. They're not out there trying to find those people.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I find it very interesting. I'm going to do it. I'm going to come down there. I'm going to buy a box to make wine.
Oh, yeah.
And me and my wife are going to go home. We're going to do a date night, put the little one to sleep. We're going to spend 45 minutes making a bottle of wine. And we're going to wait, how long until that?
So the minimum is going to be like 3 weeks.
Okay.
But it's also one of those things where the more patience you can give it, the longer you can wait, the better it'll get.
Okay. So maybe we make 2 batches.
Yeah.
One for 3 weeks, then one for 6 weeks. See the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That'd be fun. Huh. That's really
And
cool.
make a batch that you know you're not going to touch for a year.
Oh, wow.
You make a batch and you just put it up and forget about it for a year. And then you come back.
Oh, here's another thing I wanted to ask you too. So me and my wife, we used to visit this natural wine bar that we really enjoyed in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't remember the name right now. I'll put it on the screen. But it was all natural wines. That's what made it very special. So the way that these wines are made when you make them at home, are they still considered all natural wines?
So when you say it's an all-natural wine, typically what that means is the processes that the wine goes through and the ingredients are things that you find in nature. And so I'll just give you a quick example. There's something called a pectic enzyme, which helps break down the cell walls in the fruit to release flavor and sugar. Okay. Now I can sell you a package of pectic enzyme. If you're making, say, a plum wine, the natural pectic enzyme is in the peel. So you do the ferment process with the skin and the peel in the ferment for a particular period of time. And that natural pectic enzyme will do its job, right? So that's the difference. It doesn't mean that the pectic enzyme that you buy from me is unnatural. It's just pectic enzyme.
Okay.
It just means that we used laboratories to take the pectic enzymes that are in nature and just put it in a powder form that now I can just sprinkle in and do.
Okay, I understand.
Right? So that's kind of the difference. But sure, yeah, you can make an all-natural wine like they might have made 150 years ago.
Wow, that's interesting.
And it's going to take longer. It's going to require more patience.
How much longer?
It depends. Like how much of those chemicals are you, like there's pectic enzyme, there's potassium metabisulfite, there's potassium sorbate, there's all these different things. And if you buy it in a package, it's just quick.
Okay.
Right? The fining agents that I use to clarify it, to make it pretty and clear rather than hazy, that takes about 24 hours with the fining agents that I use. Or you can let it sit while it's hazy for 3 months and it will eventually look like this. But it just takes forever.
Okay. Wow. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
There's so much. I guess that's why people need people like you.
Right. Like I can show you just how simple it is on the beginning surface level. And then you can go as deep after that as you want.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. How can people be a part of Home Brew Center and all the things you're doing?
Of course, we have a Facebook page, Home Brew Center. So follow, like, come check us out. Come to some of the workshops, hang out, have a good time. We also have like a lounge area. Anytime you want to come by, we've always got samples down there. You can sit and have a drink and just kind of chill, hang out with us. And yeah.
It's cool. Well, thank you, man, for coming on. There's so many more questions that I have. I might have to have like a part 2 with you.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for coming on. If you guys are interested in some of the things that they do, definitely stop by for a workshop and also check out the brew kits because I'm going to check them out and me and my wife are going to have some fun brewing at home. So
absolutely. You're
going
to have a blast.
I appreciate it.